Princess Charlotte, is still years away from turning 18. But when that day finally arrives, her life will change forever. From new royal responsibilities and greater public scrutiny to powers and privileges she doesn't have today, becoming an adult will mark the beginning of a completely different chapter. Let me break it down. Charlotte was born on the 2nd of May, 2015, at St. Mary's Hospital in London. That makes her 18th birthday land in 2033. 7 years out. Sounds distant. It isn't. Not in royal planning terms, because the institution starts adjusting years before the day actually arrives. Here's the first thing that changes, and it's bigger than most people realize. Charlotte becomes eligible to serve as a counselor of state. Counselors of state are authorized to carry out most of the official duties of the sovereign. For example, attending Privy Council meetings, signing routine documents, and receiving the credentials of new ambassadors to the United Kingdom. These are people who can literally act on the monarch's behalf, sign documents, meet ambassadors, keep the machinery of the crown running when the king is sick or out of the country. Normally, you have to be 21 to hold that role. Counselors have to be 21, 18 for the heir to the throne, and domiciled in the United Kingdom. Charlotte isn't the heir. Her brother George holds that spot, so the ordinary rule applies to her. 21, not 18. But here's the part that matters for the throne itself. Counselors of state are always the monarch's spouse and the first 4 people in the line of succession. Charlotte sits third. That means the moment she's old enough to legally qualify, she is automatically one of the handful of people in the entire country authorized to stand in for the king. That's not a ceremonial footnote. It's a structural fact about the monarchy that most 11-year-olds never have to think about. And Charlotte will grow into it without ever getting a say in whether she wants the job. Now compare that to what's already happening to her older brother. Because George's milestone birthdays are giving us a preview of exactly what Charlotte is walking into. George turned 13 this past week, and royal watchers have already clocked the changes rippling through his life. He faces the challenge of starting at Eton boarding school in September, and according to commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, the young prince has been inducted into things very gradually, increasing his public appearances as he grows older. George has already crossed one of the quieter thresholds that Charlotte will hit herself. Royal protocol kicked in after George turned 12, meaning that he and William can no longer travel together with air travel, confirmed to keep them separated. That's not about age of majority. That's about protecting the line of succession from a single disaster wiping out 2 heirs at once. Charlotte, sitting one spot behind George, lives under the exact same shadow rule. But 18 is different. 18 is the line between minor royal being shaped by the institution and adult royal the institution has to formally answer to. And the historical pattern is consistent. When William turned 18, the palace didn't wait long to give him independence. He and Harry were granted their own royal household by their grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, complete with staff, an office, and their own ciphers or logos representing them individually, rather than as extensions of their father. That's the model. An 18th birthday in this family isn't a party. It's an administrative event. New legal status, new eligibility for constitutional duties, and eventually a new office with Charlotte's own initials stamped on the letterhead. There's also the question of what happens to her physically, who's around her, who's paying for it, and how visible she becomes. Right now, Charlotte is one of the most protected minors on the planet. Royals who qualify for full-time taxpayer-funded protection include King Charles and Camilla, as well as Prince William and Princess Catherine and their children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. That protection is tied to her family's working status right now, not her own. At 18, the equation changes. Because she stops being a dependent and starts being an individual, the state has to make a decision about. We've seen this exact fork happen before with her cousins. Precedent set by Princess. Beatrice shows the palace can extend protection past childhood when it serves a purpose. When Beatrice studied abroad in Switzerland, the palace used taxpayer dollars to provide her with protection for the duration of her education. But precedent set by other relatives shows protection can also just stop. Princess Anne's children, Zara Tindall and Peter Phillips, don't work for the crown, so they aren't granted police protection. Charlotte's future security isn't guaranteed by her blood. It's decided case by case, the same way it's been decided for every adult royal before her. So within the first few years after her 18th birthday, 3 separate machines start turning at once. The constitutional machine deciding whether she's fit to be a counselor of state, the security machine deciding what protection follows her into adulthood, and the household machine deciding whether she gets her own office, her own staff, her own public identity, separate from Prince William's daughter. None of that requires her to do anything. It happens because of where she was born and who her father is. What she does after that university patronages, whether she embraces the role or tries to step back from it, the way an uncle once did, that's where her own choices start to matter. And that's where the story gets interesting. Let's separate the fairy tale from the paperwork, because turning 18 for Charlotte carries 2 entirely different categories of consequence. One is ordinary, the stuff any British teenager gets. The other is uniquely hers, tied to a crown that's existed for over 1,000 years. Start with the ordinary. At 18, Charlotte becomes a legal adult under UK law, same as anyone else. She can vote. She can marry without needing anyone's permission. She can sign contracts, open her own accounts, make her own medical decisions. For most 18-year-olds, none of that is remarkable. For Charlotte, it's the first time in her life that her choices aren't filtered entirely through her parents or the palace communications office, but layered on top of that ordinary adulthood is something almost nobody else on Earth experiences the moment you become eligible to legally deputize for a head of state. We already covered the counselor of state mechanics, the requirement that she hit 21 rather than 18 since she isn't the heir herself. That's worth sitting with for a second, because it means Charlotte's road to constitutional relevance is actually longer than her brother's. George, as the heir presumptive, gets the fast lane, 18, and he's eligible. Charlotte waits 3 more years, purely because of where she sits in the order of succession, not because of anything she has or hasn't done. That's a strange thing to build a life around. 2 siblings, same parents, same upbringing, different clocks ticking toward the same constitutional door. Now here's where the family's own history gives us a genuine playbook, because every young royal who's crossed 18 in the last few decades has faced some version of the same set of decisions. And watching how each of them handled it tells us a lot about what's coming for Charlotte. Take William. His 18th birthday came with none of the independence yet. That arrived later, once he'd finished his education and started military training. What we do know is that by his mid-20s, William was training as a search and rescue helicopter pilot with the Royal Air Force, while Harry, at 24, began 2.5 years of training to fly British Army helicopters. Both brothers used the years right after their formal adulthood to build an identity that wasn't just the king's son. Charlotte doesn't have the military service tradition pushing her the same direction, but she does have the same expectation that 18 is when the real shaping of her adult public identity begins. Then there's the title question, which turns out to be less settled than people assume. Charlotte already holds the title Princess, and the style Her Royal Highness. She was born with it, unlike some of her cousins. So there's no 18th birthday decision required on that front. But look at what's happened with the wider family, because it shows this institution doesn't treat every grandchild the same way. Prince Edward's children were raised without the prince and princess, styling their cousins Carrie instead, going by titles like Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex, specifically so that as adults, the children could make title decisions themselves at age 18. And one of them just did. James, Prince Edward and Sophie's son, turned 18 and fully rejected the chance to go by Prince, with royal expert Richard Eden reporting that James 16th in line to the throne will not, I'm told, be using his titles, a source adding that it's simply not what interests him. Charlotte doesn't get that particular choice. Her title was assigned at birth, not offered as an option at 18, but the fact that this exact fork exists elsewhere in her own family, one generation over, tells you something important. Royal adulthood isn't a single script. It's a series of decisions, some made for you, some made by you, and the family has shown it's willing to let members opt out of the trappings if they want to. Charlotte will be watching her younger cousins make that choice. Around the same years, she's making her own decisions about university, patronages, and public life. There's also the money question, which almost never gets discussed directly, but sits underneath everything. Royal finances flow through structures like the Privy Purse, managed by an office that oversees the family's private income. That office manages funds for royal concerns like the Chapel Royal, Royal Ascot, Grace and Favor Apartments, and the Duchy of Lancaster. Money drawn largely from the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall. Charlotte isn't in line to inherit either duchy directly. Those follow the male line. Heir apparent tradition tied to George's future position as Prince of Wales, but as an adult member of the family who might take on public duties. She becomes a line item in a budget that Parliament and the public both scrutinize constantly. So, by the time Charlotte blows out 18 candles, she's already stepped through several doors at once. Legal adulthood under ordinary British law, eligibility to be considered for constitutional duty. A few years later, a title she never has to renegotiate, but that her cousins are actively renegotiating around her, and a financial existence tied to institutions most people will never fully understand. That's the scaffolding. What she builds on top of it, her actual public role, is where the next part of this story goes. Here's the part of Charlotte's future that sounds like trivia until you realize it's actually load-bearing for the entire monarchy. She is, right now, third in line to the British throne, and she stays there for the rest of her life. Unless something extraordinary happens, that fact alone makes her 18th birthday matter in a way it wouldn't for a more distant cousin. Charlotte made history the moment she was born because of a change in the law that happened just before her. She became the first female in the British line of succession to not be skipped in line by a younger brother following the passage of the Succession to the Crown Act 2013. Before that law, a younger brother would have leapfrogged her the moment he arrived. Instead, when her brother Louis was born 3 years later, nothing changed. The rule was tested after the 2018 birth of Prince Louis, and Charlotte remained third in line, with Louis coming in behind her at fourth. That's not a footnote about fairness. It's the reason she's structurally close enough to the throne that her 18th birthday triggers constitutional eligibility at all. If the old rules had still applied, Louis, being born male, would have pushed her down, and the Counselor of State conversation we just had might not even involve her. Now, the mechanism itself is worth understanding properly because it's older and stranger than people expect. The position of Counselor of State was created in 1937 under the Regency Act, after 9 separate Regency Acts had been passed piecemeal since 1728 to cover various emergencies. George VI's government decided to build a permanent rule instead, creating the office specifically to cover short absences where a full regency would be overkill. In other words, this isn't some ceremonial leftover. It's the actual contingency plan for what happens if the monarch is out of the country or ill, and the government still needs royal sign-off on something. The rules on who counts are specific and don't bend for sentiment. Counselors of state may carry out such of the royal functions as may be specified in the letters patent, which in practice means most of the monarch's official duties: attending Privy Council meetings, signing routine documents, receiving ambassadors' credentials. But there are hard limits too. By law, counselors of state cannot grant ranks, titles, or peerages. So even once Charlotte is old enough and potentially called upon, there's a ceiling on what she'd actually be allowed to do. She'd be running the administrative machinery of the crown, not making new lords. And there's a procedural quirk that matters here too. There's a legal presumption that counselors of state should act jointly, and consequently at least two are needed to act, with the absence of one possibly risking a legal challenge. Translation: Charlotte, once eligible, wouldn't be a solo backup king. She'd be part of a small rotating pool, always needing at least one other qualifying family member alongside her to actually exercise any power. That's part of why the current list already includes names like the Queen, the Prince of Wales, the Princess Royal, the Duke of Edinburgh, the Duke of Sussex, Prince Andrew, and Princess Beatrice. A deliberately wide bench, even though in practice, only working members of the family are actually called upon to act as counselors of state. That last detail is the one that really shapes Charlotte's likely path. Being legally eligible and being actually used are two different things. Her uncle, the Duke of Sussex, remains technically on that list, still eligible because he maintains a home in the UK, despite stepping back from royal duties years ago. Eligibility doesn't disappear just because someone's public role shrinks. So even if Charlotte grows up, goes to university, builds a private life, and never does a single royal engagement, she could still sit on that list simply by virtue of blood and UK residency. The institution keeps the door open even for family members who've mentally walked out of the building. What this means for the real Charlotte 7 years from now is that her 18th birthday isn't when she becomes powerful. It's when she becomes eligible to be powerful, a distinction that matters enormously because eligibility without an active mandate means she can spend her 20s choosing how much of that door she actually wants to walk through. Her cousin James just showed the family that walking away from titles is allowed. Her uncle Harry showed that walking away from active duty while keeping the underlying legal status is also allowed. Charlotte's actual 18th birthday just puts her at the start of that same fork, not the end of it. But there's a piece of this that's much less abstract than Regency Acts and letters patent, and it's the piece most people actually care about. What happens to her physically, publicly, day to day, the year she stops being a schoolgirl, the cameras occasionally catch at Wimbledon, and starts being a young woman. The palace has to actively manage as a public figure. That's next. The most visible change in Charlotte's life at 18 won't be constitutional. It'll be personal who's standing next to her, whether she's traveling alone and whether she's suddenly expected to show up somewhere and represent the family by herself. Right now, protection follows the family unit. Charlotte is folded into the same taxpayer-funded security that covers her parents because she's a minor and a working royal household's dependent. That status isn't permanent by default. It's a policy choice renewed based on circumstance, and the family has already shown multiple versions of what happens when a young royal ages out of the default protection. The clearest case study is Beatrice. When she left the country for university-level education in Switzerland, the state didn't just let her go unprotected. The palace used taxpayer dollars to provide her with protection for the duration of her education, a deliberate extension made because a working royal studying abroad still represented a target and a national interest. That's a strong precedent for Charlotte, who is far closer to the throne than Beatrice ever was. If protection was extended for a niece studying overseas, it's difficult to imagine a scenario where a woman third in line to the throne loses coverage the moment she turns 18 and heads off to university herself. But the family has also shown the other side of that coin. Once a royal genuinely steps away from active duty, the funding disappears. Prince Harry no longer receives UK state-funded security since leaving his senior royal duties. Despite spending decades inside that same protective bubble, and more distantly, cousins like Zara Tindall and Peter Phillips don't work for the crown, so they aren't granted police protection at all, despite being direct grandchildren of a reigning monarch. Proximity to the bloodline isn't the deciding factor. Active duty is. That's the fork Charlotte will eventually face just later than most, because unlike Harry or Zara, she can't simply announce she's stepping back the way an adult might choose to. She's third in line. The institution has a vested interest in keeping her close, safe, and available, precisely because of that Counselor of State eligibility sitting a few years out. A young woman that close to the throne isn't someone the Home Office wants making unprotected trips through European train stations. Then there's the question of what she actually does in public once she's legally an adult. This is where her brother's current trajectory is the best available preview, because George is a few years ahead of her on the exact same runway. Commentator Russell Myers described George's first taste of solo-adjacent responsibility this way. This was the first sign of George taking on future duties, even though he is so young, adding that he seems to have grown in confidence over the last couple of years. That happened at a Buckingham Palace event where George asked veterans thoughtful questions about their wartime service in a deeply meaningful appearance. According to People's reporting, the family's approach, insiders say, is deliberate and slow. One source close to the household described the strategy for George as a slow game, with William and Kate determined to give their eldest a normal childhood, even as his future role looms larger, with William reportedly wanting him to embrace it as destiny, not duty. That same slow game philosophy is almost certainly what's waiting for Charlotte. Nobody expects her to be thrown into solo diplomatic visits the week she turns 18. What's more likely, based on the family's own pattern, is a gradual increase in joint appearances, followed by a handful of solo patronage visits. Once she's finished any university commitments, followed eventually by full public duties, if she chooses that path. Royal historian Marlene Koenig's read on George applies almost word for word to Charlotte's situation too. Family members become undoubtedly aware of their future roles gradually, largely shaped by conversations that happen inside the family rather than any single dramatic announcement, with public events serving as the visible markers of an awareness that's been building for years. What's different for Charlotte is the audience's expectations. She's not the heir. She's not going to be queen, barring a genuinely unlikely chain of events. That actually gives her more room than George has. More room to choose how public she wants to be. More room to pursue something entirely her own, the way Princess Anne carved out an identity around sport and patronages that had nothing to do with being first in line. Insiders have already floated that comparison directly, noting Charlotte's personality resembles her great-aunt's. One royal watcher pointed out that because Charlotte is the first princess to be above a living brother in the line of succession, she is growing up with a sense of responsibility while still being a great source of strength for her mother during a difficult health chapter for the family. That's the version of Charlotte turning 18 that actually shows up on camera. Not a constitutional document, not a Regency Act clause, but a young woman stepping out of school uniforms and into whatever version of public life she and her parents decide fits her. And that decision, how much of the spotlight she takes and how much she quietly declines, is where her story stops being predictable and starts being genuinely hers to write. Everything up to this point has been about what happens to Charlotte automatically, the legal status she can't avoid, the constitutional eligibility baked into her birth order, the security calculus that shifts the moment she's no longer a minor. None of that required her to want anything. It just arrives, the way a birthday arrives. But the family has spent the last 2 decades demonstrating, over and over, that 18 is also the moment when a royal finally gets to choose something for themselves. And every example we've covered points toward a handful of live options sitting in front of Charlotte the year she turns 18. Option 1. Lean in. the way William eventually did, using the years right after 18 to build toward a working royal identity, university, then a slow expansion of solo patronages, then eventually full-time duties. That path is the institution's default expectation for someone third in line, who's grown up entirely inside the working core of the family, unlike more distant cousins. Option 2. Step back from the active role while keeping the underlying status, the way Harry ultimately did, though in Harry's case that came years after 18, and after a full military career first. After stepping back from royal duties, Harry's life underwent significant changes. He relocated and became financially independent, no longer a working member of the royal family. That path exists for Charlotte too, however unlikely, and the family's public handling of Harry's exit shows it's survivable, if messy. Option 3. And maybe the most interesting given her family's most recent example, quietly decline the trappings altogether the way her cousin James just did, walking away from the styling and the spotlight while keeping a private life. Charlotte can't reject her title the way James rejected his. Hers was assigned at birth, not offered as a choice, but she can absolutely choose how much she uses it, how visible she makes herself, and how much of the platform she actually picks up. What's clear from every precedent we've walked through is that none of these choices happen in isolation. They happen inside a family that discusses succession changes with its children years in advance, the way Robert Lacey reported William and Kate did with George, starting conversations around his birthright near his 7th birthday, reportedly wanting to delay the topic so he could have a normal family upbringing first. Charlotte is almost certainly having, or will have, some version of that same conversation, tailored to her specific place in line, close enough to matter constitutionally, far enough back to have genuine room to choose her own life. And the institution itself keeps evolving underneath her, which changes the shape of what she's stepping into. There's ongoing discussion, reported by royal commentators, about William eventually running a leaner monarchy once he's on the throne, with titles potentially stripped from non-working royals. So no future embarrassments can attach themselves to the crown, according to one royal author's sourcing. If that kind of slimming down continues over the next 7 years, Charlotte could turn 18 into a monarchy that looks structurally different from the one her grandfather currently runs. Fewer working royals, tighter public funding, higher scrutiny on anyone drawing from state protection or the privy purse. That's the honest shape of what's coming. Not a single dramatic transformation on one specific morning in 2033, but a series of doors opening at once. Legal adulthood, constitutional eligibility a few years further out, a security question that depends entirely on choices she hasn't made yet, and a public role that the family will almost certainly build slowly rather than announce all at once. Her brother is already living the early version of this exact process, a few years and one spot in line ahead of her, and everything currently happening to George, the school changes, the travel restrictions, the first solo adjacent appearances, is effectively a preview reel for what Charlotte's own approach to 18 will look like. The one certainty is her position itself, third in line, protected by a piece of legislation passed specifically, so she wouldn't be pushed down the line by a younger brother, sitting close enough to the throne that the government's own contingency plan for royal absence already has her name penciled in for the moment she's legally old enough to hold it. Whatever she chooses to do with that, embrace it, quietly step around it, or find some version in between the way most of her generation of royals eventually has. The structure will be waiting for her the day she turns 18, whether she's ready for it or not. Sources: Councillors of State, Debrett's, Councillors of State, Royal.uk, Councillor of State, Wikipedia, Keeper of the Privy Purse, Wikipedia, Princess Charlotte of Wales, Wikipedia. Why Princess Charlotte's birth in 2015 made royal history, Yahoo. Princess Charlotte's 10th birthday photo, Yahoo. Princess Charlotte is taking after this royal, AOL in style. Happy birthday, George. France, 24. Prince George, 12, shows first sign of his future role. People, AOL. Prince George is undoubtedly aware of future as king, AOL, Prince George, the boy who will be king, AOL. Prince George future king talk, Fox News, royal family security, which royals get it. The list, Crown double standard, Prince Andrew, AOL Radar Online. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, Britannica. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, simple Wikipedia. Princes William and Harry set up own office. NBC News. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle to lose their titles. News Nation. Prince William's cousin just turned 18 and rejected titles. Cosmopolitan, AOL. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle's son Archie, could choose to become a prince. Fox News.